The alarm clock screamed at 5:30 a.m., but Rebecca was already awake. She had been staring at the ceiling for the past 20 minutes, her mind racing with worry. Today was going to be difficult, and she knew it. Her 7-year-old son Tommy was still sleeping peacefully in the next room. His school had called yesterday afternoon with the news that the heating system had broken down completely. The building would be closed for at least 2 days, maybe 3. They were so sorry for the inconvenience, the principal had said. But safety came first, Rebecca understood. Of course she did. But understanding didn't solve her problem. She got up and made coffee, her hands moving automatically through the familiar routine. The apartment was small but clean, filled with Tommy's artwork on the walls and his toys neatly arranged in bins. She had worked hard to make this place a home for just the two of them. Her phone sat on the kitchen counter like a loaded weapon. She picked it up and scrolled through her contacts one more time, even though she had already tried everyone last night. Her regular babysitter, Mrs. Chen, was in bed with the flu. Her neighbor, who sometimes helped out, was visiting her daughter in another state. Her cousin Lisa didn't answer, probably already at her own job. Rebecca had no family in Chicago. Her parents were gone, and her sister lived 3 states away with her own kids. It was just her and Tommy, the way it had been since the divorce 3 years ago. She looked at the clock. 6:15 a.m. She needed to be at the office by 8:30. Henderson and Associates didn't tolerate lateness, especially not from administrative assistants like her. She had seen 2 people let go in the past year for repeated tardiness. Taking a sick day crossed her mind, but she had already used her last personal day when Tommy had strep throat 2 weeks ago. Mr. Henderson, the senior partner, had made it very clear that the firm expected dedication and reliability. Missing work without a legitimate reason was grounds for termination. But what choice did she have? Rebecca walked to Tommy's room and gently shook his shoulder. He opened his eyes slowly, confused about why she was waking him up so early. "Hey, buddy," she said softly. "I need to talk to you about today." 20 minutes later, after much explanation and reassurance, Tommy was getting dressed. Rebecca had made him promise to be on his absolute best behavior. No running, no loud noises, no asking questions. He would sit quietly in an empty conference room with his books and his tablet. Just for today, she had promised. Just until she could figure something else out. "Will I get you in trouble, Mom?" Tommy had asked, his big brown eyes full of concern. "No, sweetheart," she had lied. "Everything will be fine." They took the bus to downtown, Tommy clutching his backpack filled with books, coloring supplies, and his tablet with headphones. Rebecca held his hand tightly, her stomach churning with anxiety. She kept telling herself this was temporary. One day, she would work extra hard, stay late, make up for any inconvenience. The office building loomed above them, all glass and steel and professional coldness. They rode the elevator to the 12th floor in silence. Tommy was being so good, so quiet and well-behaved that it made Rebecca's heart ache. The reception area was empty when they arrived. Rebecca quickly guided Tommy down the hallway to the small conference room at the end. It was rarely used except for overflow meetings, and she was betting that no one would need it today. "Remember what we talked about," she whispered, setting up his things on the table. "Quiet as a mouse, okay?" Tommy nodded solemnly. "Quiet as a mouse." Rebecca kissed his forehead and left, closing the door gently behind her. She walked to her desk in the main administrative area, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. For the first 2 hours, everything went smoothly. Rebecca answered phones, filed documents, prepared briefs for the attorneys. She checked on Tommy once during her break, finding him quietly reading a book about dinosaurs. He looked up and gave her a thumbs up. She wanted to cry with relief, but then everything fell apart. At 11 a.m., Mr. Henderson stormed through the office like a thundercloud. He was a tall man in his 60s, always dressed in expensive suits, always carrying an air of authority and impatience. Behind him were 3 people in business attire, clearly important clients. "The main conference room is being repainted," he announced to no one in particular. "We'll use the small one at the end." Rebecca felt the blood drain from her face. She stood up from her desk, her mouth opening to say something, anything, but her voice wouldn't work. She watched helplessly as Mr. Henderson and the clients disappeared down the hallway. 30 seconds later, she heard his voice, loud and sharp with anger. "What is this? What is a child doing in my conference room?" Rebecca ran. Her legs felt like jelly, but she ran down that hallway faster than she had ever moved. When she reached the conference room, Mr. Henderson was standing in the doorway, his face red with fury. The client stood behind him, looking uncomfortable. Tommy was frozen at the table, his eyes wide with fear. "I can explain," Rebecca started, her voice shaking. "You brought a child to work?" Mr. Henderson's voice was ice cold now, which was somehow worse than the yelling. "To a law firm? During business hours? With clients present? His school closed unexpectedly and I had no child care. I didn't know what else to do. I'm so sorry, I just needed—" "I don't care what you needed," Mr. Henderson interrupted. "This is completely unacceptable, unprofessional, embarrassing. What kind of impression does this give our clients?" One of the clients, a woman in a gray suit, spoke up softly. "It's really okay, we understand these things happen." "No, it's not okay," Mr. Henderson snapped. He turned back to Rebecca. "Collect your things. You're terminated, effective immediately." The words hit Rebecca like a physical blow. "Please, Mr. Henderson, please. I have bills, I have rent. I need this job. It won't happen again, I promise. You should have thought about that before bringing your personal problems into this office. We expect professionalism here. You clearly cannot provide that." He turned to his assistant, who had appeared in the doorway. "Please escort Mrs. Williams and her child out of the building." Rebecca felt Tommy's small hand slip into hers. She looked down at him, seeing tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry, Mommy," he whispered. "I'm sorry." "It's not your fault, baby," she managed to say, even though her own tears were starting to fall. "It's not your fault at all." She walked back to her desk in a daze, aware that everyone in the office was staring. She collected her few personal items, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold anything. The assistant stood nearby, arms crossed, making sure she didn't take anything that belonged to the firm. 5 minutes later, Rebecca and Tommy were standing on the sidewalk outside the building. The autumn wind was cold, cutting through her thin blazer. She had no job, no prospects, and rent was due in 2 weeks. Tommy looked up at her, his face tear-stained and worried. "Did I make you lose your job?" Rebecca knelt down and pulled him into a tight hug. "No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-up stuff is just complicated." But inside she was falling apart. How was she going to pay rent? How would she buy groceries? What kind of mother puts her child in a situation like this? She took Tommy's hand and they started walking toward the bus stop. She didn't know what she was going to do next. She only knew that somehow she had to figure it out. She always did. That's what mothers do. 3 months had passed since that terrible day, and Rebecca felt like she was drowning in slow motion. The first week after losing her job, she had cried every night after Tommy went to sleep. The second week, she stopped crying and started applying for jobs. Dozens of them. Administrative positions, receptionist roles, data entry, customer service. Anything that would pay the bills and let her take care of her son. But every interview seemed to end the same way. "So why did you leave your last position?" they would ask, their pens poised over her application. Rebecca had tried different answers. She had tried being vague, saying it was time for a change. She had tried being partially honest, mentioning scheduling conflicts. But somehow they always found out. Chicago's professional community was smaller than people thought, especially in the legal and business sectors. Word traveled fast. When employers called Henderson and Associates for references, Mr. Henderson's assistant gave them the bare facts. Terminated for bringing unauthorized person into the workplace during business hours. Professional conduct issues. Those words followed Rebecca like a shadow. She could see it in the interviewers' faces. The way they would sit back in their chairs. The way their smiles would become polite, but distant. Professional conduct issues meant risk. Nobody wanted to hire someone who might bring problems. To make ends meet, Rebecca had taken whatever work she could find. She waitressed at a diner 3 nights a week, working the dinner shift from 5 until midnight. The tips were decent, but her feet ached so badly by the end of the night that she could barely walk. On weekends, she cleaned offices, pushing a vacuum through empty buildings while the city slept around her. The money from these jobs barely covered rent and groceries. There was nothing left for extras. Tommy's birthday had come and gone with a homemade cake and a used book from the thrift store. He had hugged her and said it was the best birthday ever, which somehow made it worse. She saw how the situation was affecting him. Tommy had always been a cheerful kid, always talking, always asking questions about everything. But lately he had become quiet. He watched her with worried eyes when he thought she wasn't looking. He stopped asking for things, even small things like a candy bar at the checkout line. One night she found him in his room, counting coins from his piggy bank. "What are you doing, buddy?" she asked. "I have $3.47, he said seriously. "Will that help with the rent?" Rebecca had to leave the room because she couldn't let him see her cry. Again. The apartment grew colder as fall turned into early winter. She kept the heat at the minimum temperature, and they both wore sweaters indoors. The cable had been canceled months ago. Tommy didn't complain. He never complained anymore, and that worried her more than anything. Rebecca's breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in late November. She was at the diner, tired from only 4 hours of sleep, when she accidentally dropped a full tray of breakfast plates. The crash echoed through the restaurant. Everyone stopped and stared. The manager, a heavy-set man named Lou, rushed over. "Jesus, Rebecca, that's the second time this month." I'm so sorry," she said, already kneeling to pick up the broken pieces. Her hands were shaking. She felt dizzy. "When's the last time you had a full meal?" Lou asked, his anger shifting to concern. "You look like you're about to collapse." "I'm fine," she lied, standing up too quickly. The room spun. Lou caught her arm. "Sit down. I'm getting you some food, and don't argue with me." He brought her scrambled eggs, toast, and orange juice. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until she started eating. She had been skipping meals, making sure Tommy had enough. "Look," Lou said, sitting down across from her. "You're a good worker, but you're running yourself into the ground. You need a real job, not cobbling together shifts at 3 different places." "You think I don't know that?" Rebecca's voice came out harsher than she intended. "I'm trying. I'm applying everywhere. Nobody wants to hire someone who got fired." Lou was quiet for a moment. "My wife works in HR at some tech company downtown. They're always hiring. Let me ask her if they have anything." Rebecca wanted to say no, wanted to tell him not to bother, that she had already been rejected too many times to hope anymore, but she was too tired to refuse help. "Thank you," she said quietly. 2 days later, her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, thinking it was another debt collector. But something made her pick up. "Is this Rebecca Williams? This is Patricia Chen from Vertex Tech Solutions. We received your resume and we'd like to schedule an interview for our office manager position." Rebecca's heart jumped. "Yes, absolutely. When would you like me to come in?" The interview was scheduled for the following Monday. Rebecca borrowed a better blazer from her neighbor and spent the weekend preparing. She researched the company, practiced her answers, and tried not to let herself hope too much. Hope was dangerous. Hope could crush you. Vertex Tech Solutions was located in a modern building in the West Loop. The office space was completely different from Henderson & Associates. Instead of dark wood paneling and formal conference rooms, everything was open and bright. There were plants everywhere. Someone's dog was sleeping under a desk. Patricia, the HR director, was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a warm smile. They talked in a small meeting room with comfortable chairs and abstract art on the walls. "Walk me through your work history," Patricia said. This was the moment Rebecca had been dreading. She could lie by omission, or she could be honest and risk losing another opportunity. She thought about Tommy, about his piggy bank money, about the cold apartment and the skipped meals. She decided to tell the truth. "I was fired from my last position," Rebecca said, keeping her voice steady. "My son's school closed unexpectedly due to an emergency. My babysitter was sick. I had no family nearby and no other options. I brought him to work with me, kept him quiet in an unused conference room. My boss found out and terminated me immediately." She waited for Patricia's expression to change, for that familiar, polite distance to appear. Instead, Patricia leaned forward. "How old is your son?" "He's 7. And you're raising him alone?" "Yes." Patricia nodded slowly, making notes. "That must have been incredibly difficult." "The termination, I mean. And the 3 months since." "It's been challenging," Rebecca admitted, not trusting herself to say more. They talked for another 30 minutes about her skills, her experience, what the position would entail. Patricia asked smart questions about problem-solving and organization. Rebecca answered honestly, feeling like maybe, just maybe, this was different. "I need to be upfront with you," Patricia finally said. "Your resume raised some flags when it came through our system. The gap in employment, the termination. But our CEO specifically asked that you be brought in for an interview." Rebecca's stomach dropped. Why would your CEO care about my application? I don't know the details, Patricia admitted, but he saw your name and your previous employer, and he requested that we give you serious consideration. That's unusual, I won't lie. I don't understand, Patricia smiled. Neither do I completely. But I can tell you this is a good company. We have emergency childcare available, flexible scheduling, work from home options when needed. We believe people are more than their worst days. Rebecca felt tears starting to form and blinked them back. When will I hear from you? Soon, Patricia promised. Rebecca left the building feeling something she hadn't felt in months. Not quite hope, but maybe something close to it. She picked Tommy up from after-school care and splurged on McDonald's for dinner. They sat in the playground area, and he told her about his day, his words tumbling out the way they used to. You seem happy today, Mom, he said, dipping a French fry in ketchup. I had a good meeting, she told him. Are we going to be okay? Rebecca looked at her son, at his hopeful face, and made a promise she desperately wanted to keep. Yeah, baby. I think we're going to be okay. 3 days later, her phone rang again. It was Patricia. We'd like to offer you the position. Rebecca started her new job the following Monday, terrified and grateful and determined to prove herself worthy of this second chance. She had no idea what was waiting for her. Rebecca's first day at Vertex Tech Solutions felt like stepping into a completely different universe. She arrived 15 minutes early, her hands sweating despite the cold December morning. The security guard at the front desk smiled and handed her a temporary badge with her name already printed on it. That small detail, someone taking the time to prepare for her arrival, made her throat tight with emotion. The elevator ride to the 8th floor felt both too long and too short. She checked her reflection in the polished doors, smoothing down her blazer for the 10th time. This was her chance, her second chance. She couldn't mess this up. When the doors opened, she was greeted by Patricia, who looked genuinely happy to see her. Welcome to Vertex, Patricia said, shaking her hand warmly. Ready for the grand tour? The office was nothing like Henderson and Associates. People worked at standing desks or sat on exercise balls. There was a coffee bar with an actual barista making drinks. One corner had a small library with comfortable chairs. Another area had gaming consoles and a ping-pong table. We believe people do their best work when they're comfortable and happy, Patricia explained, leading her through the space. You'll notice some folks have dogs here. We're pet-friendly, and that room over there is our wellness room. Quiet space if you need to decompress or if nursing mothers need privacy. Rebecca tried to absorb everything, but her mind kept catching on details. A woman was nursing a baby in a comfortable chair by the window, completely unbothered. A man was throwing a tennis ball for a small corgi, who scrambled after it excitedly. People were laughing. Is it always like this? Rebecca asked. So casual? Patricia laughed. We work hard, but we also recognize that our employees are human beings with lives outside these walls. The founders built this company on that principle. They both came from corporate environments that treated people like machines. They wanted something better. She introduced Rebecca to her new colleagues. There was Daniel, the head of operations, a friendly guy in his 40s who immediately offered to help with anything she needed. There was Yuki, who handled client relations and had photos of her 3 kids all over her desk. There was Robert, the IT specialist who was probably the most casually dressed person Rebecca had ever seen in an office, wearing a gaming t-shirt and ripped jeans. Everyone welcomed her warmly. No one seemed to care that she was new or that she came from a failed situation. They just seemed glad to have help. Patricia showed her to her desk, which had a new computer already set up, a welcome packet with company information, and a small succulent plant in a cheerful pot with a note that said, "Welcome to the team. The CEO and co-founder will be visiting our floor later this week," Patricia mentioned as she helped Rebecca log into the system. He likes to meet new employees personally. Don't worry, he's very down to earth, not like most executives. Rebecca nodded, trying to remember everything. CSO visit, be professional, make a good impression. Her first week flew by in a blur of learning new systems, meeting people, and slowly understanding just how disorganized things had been before she arrived. Files were mislabeled, scheduling was chaotic, and basic office supplies seemed to be ordered randomly rather than on any system. This was something Rebecca could fix. This was something she was good at. She stayed late that first week, not because anyone asked her to, but because she wanted to prove herself. She reorganized the filing system, created spreadsheets for supply orders, and developed a new calendar system for meeting room bookings. By Friday afternoon, Daniel stopped by her desk with an impressed expression. "You've done more in 1 week than the last 3 people did in a month," he said. "We struck gold with you." Rebecca felt pride bloom in her chest, something she hadn't felt since before everything fell apart. That evening, she picked up Tommy from after-school care, and for the first time in months, she wasn't exhausted to her bones. She had energy. She felt like herself again. "Guess what, buddy?" she said as they walked to the bus stop. "My new job is really good." "Are they nice to you?" Tommy asked, holding her hand. "Yeah, they're nice. Really nice." "Then I'm happy," he said simply. Over the weekend, Rebecca did something she hadn't done in months. She took Tommy to the movies. It wasn't a new release, just a matinee showing of an animated film that had been out for weeks, but Tommy's face lit up like Christmas morning. They shared a popcorn and he laughed so hard during the funny parts that other people in the theater started laughing too. Walking home afterward, Tommy said, "This was the best day, Mom." "We'll have more days like this," Rebecca promised. "Things are getting better." Monday morning, she arrived at work feeling energized. She had created a whole new organizational system for client files over the weekend. Working on her laptop at home, she couldn't wait to implement it. Around 10 o'clock, Patricia appeared at her desk looking slightly rushed. "Rebecca, quick heads up. The CEO is here today. He's doing his walkthrough of the floor and meeting the team. He'll probably stop by to say hello." Rebecca's stomach flipped. She quickly checked her appearance in her phone camera, smoothed her hair, and tried to look calm and professional. 15 minutes later, she heard voices approaching. She kept her eyes on her computer screen, trying to look busy and competent, not nervous. "And this is Rebecca Williams, our new office manager," she heard Patricia say. "Rebecca started last week and has already revolutionized our filing system." Rebecca looked up and stood, extending her hand with a professional smile. "It's nice to meet you, Mr." The words died in her throat. The CEO was younger than she expected, maybe in his early 30s. He wore jeans and a button-down shirt, casual but put together. He had kind eyes and an easy smile. But that wasn't what stopped her mid-sentence, it was the way he was looking at her. Like he knew her. "Rebecca Williams," he said slowly, his voice gentle. "From Henderson and Associates." Her blood turned to ice. This was it. Someone had told him about her firing, about the embarrassment, about Tommy in the conference room. She was going to lose this job too. Everything good was about to be ripped away again. "I can explain," she started, her voice shaking. He held up a hand. "Can we talk in my office? Just for a few minutes?" Patricia looked confused. Rebecca felt like she might throw up. She nodded, unable to speak. She followed him down the hallway to a corner office with glass walls. He closed the door and gestured for her to sit. She perched on the edge of the chair, her hands gripping her knees. "Please don't fire me," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I know what happened at my last job looks bad, but I'm a good worker. I'm reliable. I just had one impossible situation, and I made the only choice I could. I have a son to support, and I can't lose another job, please." "Rebecca, stop," he said gently. He sat down across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "I'm not firing you. I'm the one who specifically requested that Patricia bring you in for an interview." She stared at him, completely confused. "What? Why?" He took a deep breath. "I was there that day, at Henderson and Associates. I was in that meeting." The memory came flooding back. The client standing awkwardly in the doorway while Mr. Henderson yelled. One of them had been a woman, she remembered. But there had been 2 others. Men in suits, business people she had barely looked at because she was so focused on Tommy's frightened face. "I saw everything," he continued. "I saw how that man treated you, how he humiliated you in front of everyone, and I saw your son's face. He was terrified. You were just trying to comfort him and get him out of there safely." "I don't understand," Rebecca whispered. The CEO leaned back in his chair, and something in his expression shifted. A sadness maybe, or a memory. "25 years ago," he said quietly, "my mother brought me to her office job. I was about your son's age, maybe a little younger. Her babysitter had canceled last minute and she had no other options. She was a single mom just like you. She worked as a secretary at a real estate firm." Rebecca's heart started pounding. "Her boss found me in the break room. I was reading a book, being as quiet as I could. He fired her on the spot. Told her she was unprofessional, that she had embarrassed the company." He paused, his jaw tight. I watched my mother beg for her job. I watched her cry, and I never forgot what that felt like. The office felt too small suddenly. Rebecca couldn't breathe. When I saw your name and your last employer on the application, he continued, something made me look into it. I made some calls, found out what happened, and I knew I had to give you a chance. Not out of pity, he added quickly, seeing her expression, but because I built this company on the belief that what happened to my mother, what happened to you, should never happen to anyone. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink them away, but they spilled over anyway. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he told her. Just know that you're here because you're qualified and talented. The interview process was real. Patricia didn't hire you because I told her to. She hired you because you were the best candidate. I just made sure you got a fair shot. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city. My mother cleaned offices for 2 years after she lost that job. She worked nights while I slept at a neighbor's house. She struggled every single day to give me a decent life. He turned back to Rebecca. She never got her second chance. But you have yours, and I hope you'll take it. Rebecca wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. What happened to your mother? His smile was sad. She passed away 5 years ago. Right before we launched this company. She never got to see what I built. What she inspired me to build. She would be so proud of you, Rebecca said softly. Maybe, he said. But right now I'm more interested in making sure you succeed. You and your son. What's his name? Tommy, he repeated, nodding. You know, we have a company picnic every summer. Family's welcome, and if there's ever an emergency, if school closes or your child care falls through, you bring him here. No questions asked. That's company policy. Rebecca couldn't hold back her tears anymore. She cried right there in the CEO's office, overwhelmed by kindness she hadn't known still existed in the world. Thank you, she managed to say. Thank you so much. He handed her a tissue box. Thank you for giving us a chance. Now let's get you back to work. I hear you have big plans for our organizational systems. Rebecca laughed through her tears, wiping her face. She stood up, feeling lighter than she had in months. As she reached the door, she turned back. What's your name? I just realized I never actually got it, he smiled. David Chen. Thank you, David. We're going to do good work together, Rebecca. I can feel it. She walked back to her desk in a daze. Patricia was waiting, looking concerned. Everything okay? Rebecca nodded, unable to explain. Yeah, everything's more than okay. She sat down at her desk, looked at her computer screen, and for the first time in 4 months, she felt like the future might actually be bright. That evening, she told Tommy everything. About David, about his mother, about how sometimes good people do exist in the world. Tommy listened carefully, his eyes wide. So he was like me, a kid whose mom had to bring him to work? Exactly like you. And now he's in charge of the whole company? That's right. Tommy thought about this for a moment. Then maybe I'll run a company someday too. And I'll be nice to people like he is. Rebecca pulled her son into a hug. You already are nice, buddy. You already are. The weeks following, Rebecca's conversation with David felt like living in a dream she was afraid to wake up from. She threw herself into her work with a passion she had forgotten she possessed. Every morning she arrived at the office energized, ready to tackle whatever challenges the day brought. The chaos that had existed before her arrival slowly transformed into smooth, organized efficiency. She created digital filing systems that made finding documents effortless. She streamlined the supply ordering process, saving the company thousands of dollars. She reorganized the meeting room scheduling system so conflicts disappeared. People started coming to her desk constantly, asking for her help with various projects. You're a miracle worker, Yuki told her one afternoon, watching Rebecca solve a scheduling nightmare that had been plaguing the sales team for weeks. Seriously, how did we function before you got here? Rebecca smiled, but inside she was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Years of struggle had taught her that good things didn't last. Something would go wrong. It always did, but weeks turned into a month and nothing went wrong. David kept his word about the family-friendly environment. When Robert's daughter got sick at school, he left immediately to pick her up and nobody blinked. When Yuki needed to work from home for a week because her son had chickenpox, it was approved without question. The company functioned on trust and understanding, not fear and rigid rules. Rebecca watched all of this with amazement. This was how workplaces should be. This was how people should be treated. One Friday afternoon, David stopped by her desk. She had gotten used to his casual check-ins over the past month. He wasn't like Mr. Henderson, who had barely acknowledged her existence unless something was wrong. David knew everyone's name, asked about their families, actually listened when people talked. "Hey, Rebecca, you got a minute?" he asked. Of course. She saved the spreadsheet she was working on and gave him her full attention. "I've been reviewing your work over the past month," he said, pulling up a chair. "The improvements you've made to our systems are impressive. Really impressive. I want to talk to you about expanding your role." Rebecca's heart skipped. "Expanding how?" "Right now you're managing office operations. But I've noticed you have a talent for seeing inefficiencies and fixing them. I'd like you to start working with our department heads on streamlining their processes too. It would mean a raise, obviously. And a new title. Director of Operations." She stared at him, certain she had misheard. "Director? But I've only been here a month. And in that month you've done what most people couldn't do in a year. Look, I don't care about arbitrary timelines. I care about talent and results. You have both." He leaned back in his chair. "Plus, I trust you. That matters more than anything." Rebecca felt tears threatening again. She seemed to cry a lot these days, but they were good tears. Happy tears. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," David smiled. "And start thinking about what other areas of the company could use your magic touch." "Yes," Rebecca said, her voice stronger than she expected. "Absolutely yes." That evening, she picked up Tommy from after-school care, practically floating. She took him to their favorite pizza place, the one they hadn't been able to afford in months, and told him about the promotion. "Does that mean you're like the boss now?" Tommy asked, his mouth full of pepperoni pizza. "Not the boss, but more important than I was before. And it means more money, which means I can buy you new shoes that actually fit." Tommy looked down at his sneakers, which were definitely too small. "Can we maybe get ones that light up?" "We can get ones that light up," Rebecca promised, and the smile on his face was worth everything. The next week, Rebecca started her new role. She met with each department head, learning their pain points and challenges. The marketing team was drowning in disorganized files and missed deadlines. The development team had communication issues causing project delays. The sales team couldn't track their leads effectively. Rebecca took notes, asked questions, and started developing solutions. She worked with IT to implement new project management software. She created communication protocols that ensured everyone stayed informed. She designed tracking systems that made data accessible and useful. Word spread quickly about the changes she was making. People started calling her the fixer. She would walk through the office and hear people say, "Ask Rebecca, she'll know how to handle it." It felt good to be valued, to be respected, to be seen as capable instead of a liability. One afternoon, about 6 weeks into her new role, Rebecca was in a meeting with the marketing team when her phone buzzed. It was Tommy's school. Her stomach immediately clenched with old anxiety. "Excuse me," she said, stepping out of the conference room. "I need to take this." "Ms. Williams?" "This is Principal Rodriguez. Tommy's fine, but he's in the nurse's office with a fever. You'll need to come pick him up." The old panic started to rise. At Henderson and Associates, this would have been a disaster. She would have had to choose between her child and her job. She would have been made to feel like a terrible employee for having the audacity to be a parent. But this wasn't Henderson and Associates. Rebecca went back into the conference room. "I'm sorry, everyone. My son is sick at school. I need to go pick him up." The marketing director, a woman named Helen, immediately waved her hand. Go, kids come first. Email us your notes and we'll implement them." "Are you sure? I don't want to leave you in the middle of—" "Rebecca," Helen interrupted gently. "We're sure. Take care of your boy. Work will still be here tomorrow." Rebecca grabbed her things and practically ran to the elevator. As she waited, David appeared beside her. "Everything okay?" he asked, noticing her rushed expression. "Tommy's sick. I have to pick him up from school." "Of course. Do you need anything?" "Can we help with anything?" The elevator arrived and they both stepped in. Rebecca shook her head, overwhelmed again by the casual kindness. "No, I just—" "Thank you for making this okay." David's expression was understanding. "Rebecca, you never have to thank us for being decent human beings. That's just baseline behavior. You'd be surprised how rare baseline decency is, she said quietly. No, David said. I wouldn't. That's why I built this place. She picked up Tommy, who was indeed running a fever and looking miserable. She took him home, got him settled on the couch with soup and his favorite cartoon, and prepared for a long night of mom duty. Her phone buzzed with a text from Helen. How's Tommy? Don't worry about work. We've got everything under control. Focus on your kiddo. Then another text from Yuki. Sending good vibes to Tommy. Rest up, both of you. Then one from Daniel. Kids getting sick is the worst. Let us know if you need anything. Rebecca stared at her phone, reading and rereading the messages. These people barely knew her, yet they cared. They genuinely cared. Tommy looked over from the couch. Who keeps texting you? My co-workers. They're asking about you. Really? Tommy looked surprised. They care if I'm sick? Yeah, buddy. They do. That's nice, Tommy said, snuggling back into his blanket. Your new job has nice people. It really does. Tommy stayed home for 2 days, and Rebecca worked from her laptop while making him soup and keeping him hydrated. Nobody at Vertex complained. Nobody made her feel guilty. Helen even sent a care package to the apartment. Delivery filled with children's medicine, crackers, and a stuffed bear for Tommy. When Rebecca returned to the office after Tommy recovered, she found a card on her desk signed by everyone in the company. Hope Tommy's feeling better. Glad you're back. She sat at her desk holding that card and realized something profound. For the first time since her divorce, since becoming a single mother, since struggling to make ends meet while being treated like she was disposable, she felt like she belonged somewhere, not just as an employee. As a person, as a mother, as someone who mattered. That afternoon there was a company-wide meeting. David stood at the front of the room, talking about quarterly results and upcoming projects. Then he shifted topics. I want to talk about company culture, he said. We've grown a lot this year. We have 50 employees now, which is incredible. But as we grow, I want to make sure we never lose sight of what makes this place special. He paused, looking around the room. We treat people like human beings here. Not resources. Not numbers on a spreadsheet. Human beings with families, with challenges, with lives outside these walls. That's not negotiable. That's not something we compromise on for the sake of profit or growth. People nodded, but David wasn't finished. Some of you might have noticed we've made a lot of improvements to our operational systems lately. That's because of Rebecca. He gestured toward her and she felt her face flush as everyone turned to look. She's brilliant at what she does. But more than that, she represents everything this company stands for. She's proof that when you give talented people a real chance, when you support them instead of undermining them, amazing things happen. There was applause, and Rebecca wanted to sink into her chair. After the meeting, several people stopped by her desk to congratulate her. She smiled and thanked them, still not quite believing this was her life now. As the office emptied for the day, David appeared at her desk one more time. You looked mortified during that meeting, he said with a grin. I don't like being the center of attention, Rebecca admitted. Too bad. You're doing exceptional work. People should know about it. He leaned against her desk. How's Tommy doing? Much better. He's back at school. Good. Listen, I wanted to ask you something. We're having a company event next month. A family day at Navy Pier. Lunch, games, that kind of thing. I'd really like you and Tommy to come. A family day? Rebecca had never worked anywhere that did anything like that. Yeah, we do it twice a year, summer and winter. It's optional, obviously, but it's a good time. The kids love it. And I think Tommy would enjoy meeting the famous stuffed bear sender. He smiled. Helen's daughter is around his age. They'd probably get along. Rebecca thought about Tommy, about how much he had sacrificed during their hard times. About the birthday with the thrift store book and the homemade cake. About him counting his piggy bank money to help with rent. We'll be there, she said. Great. David stood up to leave, then paused. Rebecca, my mother used to say that the best revenge against people who treat you badly is living well. Building something good, being happy. He looked at her seriously. You're doing that. You're living well. And I hope you're proud of yourself, because everyone here is proud of you. After he left, Rebecca sat alone at her desk for a few minutes. She thought about the past few months. The terror of losing her job. The struggle to survive. the shame and exhaustion and fear, and then she thought about now. This office, these people, this chance. David's mother had been right. Living well was the best revenge. Rebecca packed up her things and headed home to her son, already planning what they would do at Navy Pier next month. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel scary. It felt full of possibility. She was going to be okay. They were going to be okay, and that was everything. 6 months had passed since Rebecca started at Vertex Tech Solutions, and her life had transformed in ways she never imagined possible. The company family day at Navy Pier was exactly what David had promised. Tommy ran around with Helen's daughter and a bunch of other kids, their laughter echoing across the pier. Rebecca stood with a group of co-workers, eating hot dogs and watching the children play, feeling something she hadn't felt in years: peace, belonging, joy. David appeared beside her with his own hot dog, watching the kids chase each other around the carousel. "Your son seems happy," he observed. "He is. We both are." Rebecca looked at him. "I keep waiting for this to feel real, like I'm going to wake up and realize it was all a dream." "It's real," David assured her. "You earned this. Every bit of it." Tommy ran over, breathless and grinning. "Mom, can I go on the Ferris wheel?" "Please, sure, buddy. I'll take him," Helen offered, walking over with her daughter. "We're all going. You stay here and relax for once." Rebecca watched Tommy run off with the group of kids and parents, his laughter carrying back to her on the wind. She felt tears prick her eyes again. Happy tears were becoming a regular occurrence in her life now. "You know what the best part is?" she said to David. "He doesn't worry anymore. For months after I lost my job, he was so anxious, so quiet. He thought everything was his fault. But now he's just a kid again. Happy and carefree the way kids should be." "That's because you gave him stability," David said. "You did that. You fought for him and you won." The months continued to fly by. Rebecca's role kept expanding as she proved herself invaluable to the company. She wasn't just fixing systems anymore. She was helping shape company policy. David asked for her input on everything from hiring practices to office design to benefits packages. "You understand what employees actually need," he told her during one meeting. "Not what corporate consultants think they need. Real people with real lives." Rebecca helped implement a program where employees could bring their children to work during school closures or childcare emergencies. She designed a quiet room for people who needed mental health breaks. She advocated for increased parental leave and flexible scheduling. Every change she suggested came from her own experiences, from knowing what it felt like to be desperate and unsupported, from remembering Tommy's frightened face in that conference room at Henderson and Associates. She was making sure no one else would have to go through what she went through. One afternoon in early summer, almost a full year after she started at Vertex, Patricia appeared at Rebecca's desk looking excited. "Do you have a minute? David wants to see you in his office." Rebecca's stomach did a small flip. Even now, even after everything, being called to the boss's office triggered old anxieties. She took a breath and reminded herself that this was different. David was different. She walked to his office and knocked on the glass door. He waved her in, smiling. "Close the door and have a seat," he said. Rebecca sat down, trying to read his expression. He seemed happy, but also a little nervous. "So," David began, leaning back in his chair, "the company is doing really well. We've grown significantly this year, and a lot of that is because of the operational improvements you've made. We're more efficient, more organized, and employee satisfaction scores are at an all-time high." "That's great," Rebecca said, not sure where this was going. "My business partner and I have been talking. We want to expand. Open 2 more locations in different cities. Build this model we've created here and share it with more people." "That sounds amazing," David nodded. "But we can't do it without the right leadership. We need someone who understands our values, someone who knows how to build systems that support people, not exploit them, someone we trust completely." Rebecca's heart started beating faster. "We want you to be our chief operating officer," David said. "You'd oversee operations across all locations. Help us scale while maintaining the culture that makes this place special. It's a huge job. Challenging. But if anyone can do it, it's you." Rebecca couldn't speak. Chief operating officer. Her. The single mom who had been fired for bringing her kid to work. The woman who had cleaned offices at night to pay rent. The person who thought her career was over at 32. She started, then stopped. I don't have an MBA, I don't have executive experience. Are you sure? Rebecca, you have something better than an MBA. You have real-world experience and genuine empathy. You know what it's like to struggle. You know what employees need because you've been there. David leaned forward. I don't want someone with a fancy degree who learned about management from textbooks. I want someone who learned it from life. That's you. What if I mess up? The old fears were surfacing. What if I'm not good enough? You will mess up, David said honestly. We all do. But you'll learn from it and do better next time. That's what good leaders do. He smiled. My mother used to say that the people who've survived hard times make the best leaders because they never forget what it feels like to need help. You'll never forget, Rebecca. That makes you exactly the right person for this job. Rebecca wiped her eyes, not caring that she was crying in front of her boss. When do I start? Officially? Next month. After you take a week of paid vacation. He grinned. You've been working too hard. Take your son somewhere fun. Disney World, the beach, wherever. Company's paying. That evening, Rebecca picked up Tommy from summer camp and took him to their favorite park. They sat on a bench eating ice cream while she told him about the promotion. Wait, so you're like super important now? Tommy asked, his eyes wide. I guess so. That's so cool, Mom. He took a big lick of his chocolate cone. Are we rich now? Rebecca laughed. We're comfortable. We're stable. And yes, we can afford that trip to Disney World you've been asking about. Tommy jumped up and down on the bench, cheering. People in the park smiled at his enthusiasm. Rebecca watched him, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. Mom, Tommy said, settling back down. Remember when you got fired from that mean place? I remember. I was really scared that day. I thought everything was my fault. Rebecca pulled him close. It was never your fault, baby. Not for 1 second. I know that now, Tommy said. But you know what? If you didn't get fired, you wouldn't have found the good job. Where Mr. David is nice and lets people bring their kids when they need to. Out of the mouths of babes, Rebecca thought. Her 7-year-old son had just summed up the entire journey better than she could have. You're right, she said. Sometimes bad things happen so better things can come along. Do you think that mean boss man ever learned to be nice? Tommy asked. Rebecca thought about Mr. Henderson still running his law firm with an iron fist, still treating employees like they were disposable. I don't know, buddy. Some people never learn, but that's not our problem anymore. 2 weeks later, Rebecca and Tommy were on a plane to Orlando. Tommy pressed his face against the window, watching the clouds, chattering excitedly about all the rides he wanted to go on. Rebecca looked at her son, at his joy and excitement, and thought about how far they had come, from that awful day in the conference room to this moment, on their way to Disney World, with financial security and a future that looked bright. She thought about David's mother, who never got to see her son's success, who struggled and sacrificed and never got the happy ending she deserved. Rebecca wished she could thank that woman somehow. Tell her that her pain had meaning, that her son had taken that childhood trauma and turned it into something beautiful, a company that treated people with dignity, a place where parents could be parents without fear. The ripple effects of kindness and cruelty both spread far and wide. Mr. Henderson's cruelty had nearly broken her, but David's kindness, born from his mother's pain, had given her a second chance at life. When they landed in Orlando, Tommy was buzzing with energy. They checked into their hotel, put on their Mickey Mouse ears, and headed to the Magic Kingdom. As they walked down Main Street, USA, surrounded by music and laughter and the smell of popcorn, Tommy looked up at her. This is the best day ever, Mom. We're going to have a lot of best days, Rebecca promised. This is just the beginning.